This is me, this is us, etc., etc., etc. Um, I'm no wizard at this, and we didn't do any of this in response to COVID, which we'll talk about more in a minute, but I also do want to thank Kevin and Becky and Christina and Eric and that whole team because they've been a big part of this. This is not something that just came into my head alone. And also Jenny Owens, who designed the program that I get to run. So we launched this Master's of Science in Health and Social Innovation in the fall of 19. Obviously, it was pre-COVID. It is intentionally designed for working adults, as a lot of our programs are. It follows the 8-week course pattern that many of you in the graduate school are familiar with. And if you're not familiar with it, I have a slide coming up in a minute about how that works. We work in an A and a B session each semester. So each class is 8 weeks long. You do one at a time for 8 weeks. You finish that course and you go on. It was designed as a 2 or 3 year completion cycle, and it was designed intentionally with the understanding that students might not be locally based, which is part of why we did this multimodal kind of thing. So this is just a 2 year study plan. We have what we call a series of core courses, which is 12 credits. We have a series of specialization courses, which is another 12 credits. And then we have a series of capstone courses, which is the final 12 credits. This is how you get it done in 2 years. This is how you get it done in 3 years. And in the 3 year slide, you can see more clearly the specialty courses in the second year, and it kind of lays it out a little bit better there. But that's just a quick overview of how folks walk through the program. At its core, this is an entrepreneurial program. It's entrepreneurship education. And one of the key things about entrepreneurial education is that it's experiential. It can't be taught theoretically. There are theory issues and there are theory points, but at the end of the day, you have to get in and start to play with the clay. And part of that is using peer feedback as a significant educational tool. And the way I describe that to people who aren't familiar with it is it's kind of like art school. So if you've ever taken an art class, you know you're working on a painting or a drawing or something like that. And you bring it into class and you put it up on the easel and it's about half finished and everybody looks at it and says, gee, I really like the way you did the flowers in the background on that painting, but the tree in the foreground just doesn't look right. There's something that's not right about that. And you sort of talk through what might need to be fixed. And that's a process of continual feedback, which is also a core principle of entrepreneurship, both in education and in practice. And the reality of it is that not only does the person who's presented their work get great feedback, but the psychology of it is such that we as humans, when we notice flaws in other people's work, we're actually subconsciously identifying things that make us anxious in our own lives and in our own work. So what we constantly tell students when they do constructive criticism is, okay, every comment you made, take that and go back and look at your own work and make sure your own work meets those comments. So that's another reason why this multimodal platform was built all along. This is a typical 8-week course sequence for us. We have 3 live sessions. They're in week 1, week 4, and week 7. And they're typically held on Saturdays from 10 to 2. Uh, and then we use Blackboard throughout the course. And as you can see here, Blackboard changes based on the week. So you have a live session and then 2 weeks asynchronous, then another live session, 2 more weeks asynchronous, a third live session, and then a final asynchronous week. And also that last week, the week 8, because of the academic calendar, is actually short. So the weeks 1 through 7 run Monday to Sunday. Week 8 runs Monday to Friday. So that 8th module kind of becomes a cumulative summary kind of wrap up session, which is why we don't have that one as live because if it was on Saturday, it would technically be past the end of the term. And as I said, Blackboard supports throughout whatever happens. In the asynchronous weeks, we do have discussion forums, which is one of the reasons why I was interested in better tools for discussion forums in our conversation earlier. And what happens there is the students post a draft assignment to their discussion forum by Friday. They're required to review the work of at least one peer. That's due on Saturday. And then the idea is they take that feedback and incorporate it into their final submission, which goes into Blackboard and is due Sunday. In the live sessions, we do all this on the screen. So they come up and post their work there. I also do a weekly voice thread, which I send out on Mondays after grading. And I summarize the work that they've done, talk about the good and the bad. In general terms, obviously, I don't talk about specific student work, but I say, hey, as a class, we're still struggling with this issue, so you might want to go back and look at it. Everybody did really great on this other issue. Fantastic, nice work. Always try to be, particularly in the past 14 months, somewhat supportive and encouraging. Hey, you're all doing okay. Everything's all right. Da 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 da. And then preview what's coming up. Okay, so this week we're going to be reading about this and talking about the other, and your exercises A, B, and C. A couple of tips, a couple of tricks, things to focus on, that sort of thing. Pre-COVID, the live sessions were held in a classroom with our remote students on video conference, and everybody shared screens via WebEx. So there's a way in WebEx when you're in the room to still share your screen even though you're not participating on WebEx. Obviously, when COVID hit, we got rid of the classroom part and went to fully on WebEx. And then recently I've moved to Zoom because it's a narrower pipeline. It's easier for students to access without having the bandwidth. WebEx takes a lot of bandwidth. Coming out of COVID, we are going to stay fully video for at least the fall, probably the spring. I'm not sure yet how that goes. And then we may go back to the mixed methods with the classroom and the live video link in fall of 22. Still negotiating that, still looking for budget items. If anybody wants to make a substantial contribution to educational technology support, there's a really cool, I don't know if you saw, there's an article in the Times the other day that Google was experimenting with multimodal education. I had this thing they called a campfire, which is a circular setup where people are sitting in a circle with screens behind them and a camera that does a 360 rotation. It's really fascinating stuff. So if you want to buy one of those for me, I'd be happy to have it. Discussion forums, students tend to be nice. They tend to say, hey, that's great work, instead of being constructively critical. So that's something that has to be constantly encouraged. In that peer review process, there's a great temptation for the instructor to jump in and try to clarify something or provide a teaching moment, and you really need to sit on your hands while that's happening, unless somebody flames or really trashes somebody else, which doesn't happen as much in grad school. I've been teaching online for 16 years in various contexts, and I taught undergrad at another institution, and occasionally there you'd get it. Grad school, you don't get it that much. And then I also found that in the live sessions on Saturday, they typically need an extra day, so we push the due date back to Monday instead of Sunday on those sessions. So that's me. That's my story. Happy to chat or get some tips